Right, Alex Burghart, Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, in light of the new China spy case, I asked the Security Minister to place China on the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme. He told us that FIRS was a, quote, relatively new tool and that the government is seeking to ensure that we can derive the maximum operational capability from it, which is a wonderful Whitehall language, Mr. Speaker. Will the Security Minister please tell us what that means?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the arguments with regard to FIRS are well rehearsed, but I am old enough to remember when members opposite said we wouldn't introduce FIRS, then they said that we would introduce it later than we'd previously said. We introduced FIRS on time, but it is still a relatively new capability. I think it offers considerable potential in terms of what it will deliver for our country, but we're looking very closely at how we can ensure the maximum operational capability. I think that's pretty clear in any language.
So, well, it's not very clear, Mr. Speaker, because FIRS is 3 years old, and this morning I spoke to my right honourable friend for Tunbridge and Malling, who established FIRS. When he was establishing it, MI5 told him that it was essential for understanding the operation of the Chinese state in the UK. The enhanced tier would impose mandatory registration and transparency requirements on individuals and organisations in the UK working with Chinese entities. I think most people in this House would now agree that that was entirely necessary. It is there to help our security services protect our country. Please, will the Security Minister give us a date by which he will come back to this House to tell us definitively whether he will put China on the enhanced tier and set out his explanation?
Well, Mr. Speaker, on a simple point of fact, FIRS is not 3 years old. We came into government and FIRS was not a properly developed system. It was this, well, honourable members opposite may groan, it is a statement of truth to say that FIRS was not ready to go, and it was this government that got a grip and introduced that tool. It came into force, in effect, on the 1st of October last year. We've already placed 2 countries on the enhanced tier. We take these decisions very carefully, but I do give him a commitment that I will come back when there is a requirement to do so and update the House on any further decisions that we seek to make with regard to FIRS.
Alex Burghart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On his visit to Washington in February last year, the Prime Minister and Peter Mandelson had an undisclosed meeting with US data company Palantir. Palantir at the time was a client of Global Counsel, the company in which Peter Mandelson retained a commanding share, and later that year Palantir received a direct award for £240 million from this government. Given the apparent conflict of interests, will the Minister agree to publish the full details of that meeting in February last year and explain why it wasn't disclosed at the time?
I thank the honourable member for raising this particular contract. Since he's last asked the government this question, we have done some research, and the original contract was awarded by Mr. A. Burghart, Mr. Speaker, under the last administration, with a direct ministerial award for the contract that was then renewed at the subsequent awarding that he refers to. And he asked me for the disclosure of information, and that will, of course, be done under the humble address.
Alex Burghart.
I never had an undisclosed meeting with Palantir, with a person. I never had an undisclosed meeting with Palantir with a man who was advising that company. This is something entirely different, and the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister knows full well it is. There was an undisclosed meeting between the Prime Minister and this company in February last year. That should not have happened. This looks, to all intents and purposes, like a conflict of interests. Will the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister agree to publish this information? He says it's within the scope of the humble address. The humble address was about the appointment of Lord Mandelson. This is not about the appointment of Lord Mandelson. This is about a meeting that the Prime Minister and Mandelson had in February 2025. Will he please publish the details of that meeting and ensure that the new Cabinet Secretary looks in to what happened at that meeting and everything between that meeting and the direct award?
The humble address, Mr. Speaker, does deal with the matters in question, but I just remind the member that the question he's asking about is about the extension of a contract that was awarded under the previous government. To suggest that it was a new contract that had been in any way related to the meeting is incorrect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While we rightly will want to refrain from discussing too many of the details of a live espionage case, it does seem from media reporting that this goes beyond a case of just foreign state interference into local corruption. Will the government today agree to publish a list of all meetings held between Bute Energy and the government, both here in Westminster and in Wales?
The Honourable Lady is right that there's a counter-terror police operation underway, so it would be wrong for me to comment from the dispatch box, but I can reassure her and the House that the government will cooperate fully with that investigation, and when we are able to provide further updates, we will do so.
And the message, Jackson.
The National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, commenced his current role on the 2nd of December 2024, and that was announced on the 8th of November 2024. I appreciate the Ministers won't have this information to hand, but I would appreciate if he could write to me and confirm when the National Security Advisor was granted his security clearance for that role.
I'll take the question away, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, a few moments ago, the Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister indicated to me that the appointment of the head of the Propriety and Ethics team was done by an external recruitment process. So will you tell me how many other people were interviewed?
The Honourable Member, if he makes reference to his previous question, asked me if it was in a breach of the rules, and I said no. The Head of Propriety and Ethics, as I've already said to the House in previous questions, is on an interim basis, which is fully in line with the rules, and a proper recruitment process will take place shortly.
You would stand.
Thank you. There are still serious questions to answer on the administration of the Civil Service Pension Scheme. When my constituent Campbell tragically died in April last year, his wife Gaynor waited months to receive the death and service payment. In December, they found out that my CSP paid it to the wrong bank account. I've written to the Minister about this particular case. Will my honourable friend intervene to make sure Capita pay Gaynor without further delay?
I'm happy to look into the individual case, but I repeat, on both of these contracts, whether it's the existing Capita contract or indeed my CSP's previous responsibilities, the government reserves its right under both these contracts to take these matters up.
Please, question. Well, you better stand up and just ask me. Point of order,
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sorry to return to this subject. It's very clear that the government does not wish to have an investigation into what happened at the meeting between Lord Mandelson and the Prime Minister and Palantir, and everything that occurred between that and the direct award that was given to Palantir later in the year. But this is very clearly a possible conflict of interests. Given that the government does not wish to investigate this, what is at the disposal of this House to force such an investigation?
I think you already know. The Honourable Member, can I thank for his point of order? As we all know, he's a very experienced member of the House, and I know he's already tabled a written parliamentary question on this matter. I expect the Ministers to give a full and frank answers, and if he requires further advice on the options available to him, I'm happy to pursue this matter with the clerks and the table office, and I'm always happy to meet with the Honourable Member and see how we can move things forward. But I would believe it will be honest and open. Only thing I would expect is an early answer to the questions and not got lost in the system.